The massive space station hung in the darkness between stars like a giant metal flower. Inside its bright halls, creatures from 100 different worlds gathered for the most important meeting of the year. The Galactic Council was about to make a decision that would change everything. Ambassador Zeth Kohler walked into the great meeting room with confidence in every step. His green skin gleamed under the lights, and his yellow eyes looked around at all the other aliens sitting in their floating chairs. He had been planning this moment for months. Today, he would solve the galaxy's biggest problem. The room was huge, with a high ceiling that showed the stars outside. Thousands of different aliens sat in circles around a center stage. Some looked like giant bugs, others like walking trees, and some were just balls of light that talked through machines. But they all had one thing in common. They were running out of the things they needed to survive. "My friends," Zeth Kohler said as he stood on the center stage. His voice was loud and clear, carried by speakers to every corner of the room. "I have found the answer to our problems." A hologram appeared above his head, showing a small blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. It looked peaceful and beautiful, with white clouds swirling around it. "This world has everything we need," he continued, pointing at the planet. "Water that covers most of its surface, metals buried deep in its ground, plants and animals that could feed billions of our people, and best of all, it is defended by nothing more than a primitive species that barely knows how to leave their own world." Counselor Vex Prime, who looked like a walking diamond, flashed with different colors as she spoke. "Tell us more about these creatures, Ambassador. What do they call themselves?" "They call themselves humans," Zeth Kohler answered with a sound that might have been laughter in his species. "They are small, weak creatures with soft skin and no natural weapons. They fight each other constantly and have divided their world into hundreds of small territories. Their technology is so basic that they still use explosions to power their vehicles and weapons that shoot tiny pieces of metal." Another alien, this one looking like a giant octopus made of metal, raised several arms. "What about their space capabilities? Surely they have some defense against invasion?" Zeth Kohler's eyes glowed brighter with amusement. "They have managed to build a few small stations around their world and have sent some tiny ships to their nearest moon. But their largest warships cannot even travel to the next planet in their system without taking months to get there. We could destroy their entire space fleet with a single cruiser." In the back of the room, Captain Jake Morrison sat quietly in a special section marked for observers. He was the only human in the entire station, wearing the simple blue uniform of Earth's Space Diplomatic Corps. His brown hair was starting to turn gray, and his face showed the lines of someone who had seen many difficult things in his life. Next, to him sat Lieutenant Amy Carter, a young woman with short blonde hair and bright green eyes. She was taking notes on a small device, but her hands were shaking slightly as she wrote. "Captain," she whispered, "should we try to contact Earth? They need to know what's happening here." Morrison shook his head slowly, never taking his eyes off the aliens below. "They already know we're here, Amy, and they're probably watching this meeting right now through our transmitters. Let's see how far they're willing to take this." Back on the center stage, more aliens were asking questions about Earth. Most of them seemed excited about the idea of taking over a new world with so many resources. A few looked worried, but they were quickly shouted down by the others. "The humans have shown no signs of advanced technology," Zeth Kohler explained to a creature that looked like a walking tree. "Our spy ships have been watching them for over 50 of their years. In all that time, they have made slow progress, but nothing that would threaten even our oldest warships." Counselor Vex Prime flashed a pattern of blue and white lights. 50 years is not long in galactic terms, but you are certain they pose no threat?" "I am completely certain," the ambassador replied. "They waste most of their time and energy fighting each other over tiny differences in their beliefs and skin colors. They poison their own air and water while arguing about how to fix the problems they created. They are the perfect example of a species that is too stupid to deserve the beautiful world they live on." The room filled with sounds of agreement from hundreds of different species. Some clicked, some buzzed, some made noises like musical instruments. But they all seemed to be saying the same thing. This was exactly what they needed. Morrison felt his jaw tighten as he listened to the aliens talk about his people, like they were nothing more than animals. He had spent 3 years on this station, learning about galactic politics and trying to build relationships with other species. Now he was hearing them plan to destroy everything he cared about. "The vote will be simple," announced the council. Peter, an ancient creature that looked like a floating brain surrounded by tentacles. "All in favor of Operation Terra Harvest, flash green. All opposed, flash red." The room filled with green light as thousands of aliens voted to invade Earth. Morrison counted only a dozen red flashes in the entire chamber. "The motion passes," the council leader declared. "Operation Terra Harvest will begin in 30 standard days. Fleet Admiral Corax 9 of the Vidian Empire will lead the invasion force." As the meeting broke up and aliens began floating toward the exits, Morrison and Carter sat in stunned silence. Around them, they could hear excited conversations about how the resources from Earth would be divided up among the different species. "Captain," Carter said quietly, "what do we do now?" Morrison stood up slowly, his face grim but determined. "Now we go home and prepare for war. They think they're attacking a primitive species that can't fight back. They're about to learn just how wrong they are." As they walked toward the exit, Morrison thought about Earth, his blue and green world. Spinning peacefully in space, the aliens saw primitive technology and constant conflict. They saw weakness and division. But Morrison knew something they didn't. He knew that nothing brought humans together faster than a common enemy, and nothing made humans more dangerous than when their survival was threatened. The galaxy was about to discover why attacking Earth was the biggest mistake anyone could make. 30 days passed faster than anyone expected. Fleet Admiral Corax 9 stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Fang, watching the small blue planet grow larger on his screens. He was a veteran of 17 successful invasions, and his dark purple skin bore the ritual scars that marked each victory. This 18th conquest would be the easiest of all. Behind him, 200 warships of the Vidian Empire spread across space like a deadly cloud. Each ship was longer than the tallest buildings on Earth, and carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities. The Admiral's personal vessel alone was the size of a small moon. "Status report," Corax 9 commanded, settling into his command chair that was carved from a single piece of black crystal. His tactical officer, a young Vidian with bright green markings, looked up from his instruments. "Sir, we are detecting multiple transmission sources from the planet's surface. They appear to be trying to communicate with us." The Admiral's 4 eyes gleamed with amusement. How delightfully predictable. Put them through on the main screen. The face that appeared before them belonged to a human male with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a dark suit and sat behind a wooden desk with flags hanging behind him. Despite his formal appearance, there was clear fear in his expression. "This is President Dan Phillips of the United Earth Federation," the human said. His voice was steady, but anyone could hear the strain beneath it. "We know why you have come to our world. We have been monitoring your approach for the past week." Corax 9 leaned forward with interest. Most species tried to fight or run when his fleets arrived. This immediate surrender was refreshing. "We are not a warlike people," President Phillips continued. "We have resources that you need, and we are willing to share them in exchange for the protection of our civilian population. Please, there must be some way to avoid bloodshed." The Admiral's laugh was a deep rumbling sound that made his officers step back nervously. "How wonderfully civilized of you, human. You have exactly 1 of your days to begin loading our cargo ships with the materials we require. Any delay or resistance will result in the complete destruction of your major cities." President Phillips nodded slowly. "We understand. We will cooperate fully with your demands." The transmission ended, and Corax 9 turned to his crew with satisfaction. "Begin moving the fleet into optimal bombardment positions around their planet, and prepare the cargo ships for immediate resource extraction." But as the massive alien fleet moved deeper into Earth's solar system, something unexpected began to happen. The space around them, which had appeared empty on their scanners, started to fill with new contacts. "Admiral," his sensor operator called, out with confusion in his voice, "I am detecting multiple vessels emerging from behind their moon. But, sir, these readings do not match our intelligence reports." Corax 9 frowned as he studied the displays. Where he expected to see crude chemical, rockets, and primitive metal hulls, his sensors showed sleek ships moving at impossible speeds. They seemed to appear and disappear from his scanners as if they could choose when to be seen. "How many ships?" he demanded. "Difficult to say, sir. They keep phasing in and out of our detection range. At least 50, possibly more." A new transmission request appeared on the communication panel. This time, the face that appeared was not the frightened politician from before. Instead, a woman in a military uniform looked directly at the Admiral with cold, determined eyes. "Vidian Fleet, this is Commander Lisa Parker of the Earth Defense Force vessel Defiance," she said. Her voice carried no fear, only warning. "You have entered Earth space without permission and with hostile intent. You will turn your ships around and leave our system immediately, or face the consequences." Corax 9 stared at the screen in disbelief. The ship behind this human commander looked nothing like the primitive vessels his spies had reported. It was long and elegant, with a hull that seemed to bend light around it. Energy readings from the vessel made no sense according to everything he knew about physics. "Impossible," he whispered. Then, louder, "Communications. Scan their ship." "What kind of weapons are they carrying?" His weapons officer looked up with a pale expression. "Sir, I cannot identify their weapon systems. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They are using technology that should not exist." Commander Parker's image waited patiently while the aliens processed this information. Behind her, other human officers moved with calm efficiency, as if facing a fleet of 200 alien warships was just another day at work. "Admiral," she continued, "I am going to give you one more chance to withdraw peacefully. Our sensors show that your ships are carrying enough firepower to do serious damage to our planet. That makes you a clear and present danger to human civilization." Corax 9 felt his confidence beginning to crack. This was not how invasions were supposed to go. The natives were supposed to be helpless and terrified, not issuing ultimatums to vastly superior forces. "You dare threaten the Vidian Empire?" he snarled. "We have 200 ships to your 50. Our weapons can crack planets in half." Lisa Parker's expression did not change. "Admiral, you are making the same mistake that every species makes. When they first encounter humans, you are assuming that numbers and size are all that matter in warfare." She leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, Corax 9 saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. It was not fear or anger, but something much more dangerous: absolute certainty. "We have been preparing for this day for 50 years, she said quietly. "Every ship in our fleet was designed specifically to fight enemies like you. Every weapon was built to counter the technology you are using. Every strategy was planned around the assumption that we would be outnumbered and outgunned." Around the Admiral's ship, alarms began to sound as more human vessels appeared on the sensors. They were not just emerging from behind the moon now, but seeming to materialize out of empty space itself. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with growing panic in his voice, "I am reading human ships at coordinates that should be impossible. Some of them appear to be in multiple locations at the same time." Corax 9 gripped the arms of his command chair as he watched his perfect invasion plan crumble before his eyes. The humans were not running or surrendering. They were not even impressed by his massive fleet. Instead, they were surrounding him with technology that defied explanation. "This is your final warning," Commander Parker said. "Leave now, or discover why attacking Earth is considered the galaxy's greatest mistake." The Admiral looked around, his bridge at his experienced crew, all of whom were staring at their instruments with expressions of growing fear. In 17 previous invasions, he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just defending their world, they were hunting his fleet like predators stalking prey. For the first time in his long military career, Fleet Admiral Corax 9 began to understand that he might have made a terrible mistake. The primitive species he had come to conquer was anything but primitive, and now, surrounded by impossible ships using impossible technology, he realized that the Vidian Empire might have just declared war on something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The battle for Earth was about to begin. But already, it was clear that nothing would go according to the Galactic Council's plans. The first shot of the war came from Admiral Corax 9 himself. His patience finally broke when he saw more human ships appearing around his fleet, like ghosts materializing from thin air. He slammed his fist on the firing control and screamed at his weapons officer, "Fire everything. Show these primitives the power of the Vidian Empire." The space around Earth lit up like a deadly fireworks show. 200 alien warships opened fire at once, sending streams of plasma energy toward the human vessels. The beams were bright enough to be seen from the planet's surface, painting the darkness with colors of destruction. But when the light faded, the human ships were simply gone. "Where are they?" Corax 9 shouted, his four eyes scanning the tactical display in confusion. "What happened to their ships?" His sensor operator's voice shook as he answered. "Sir, they are no longer at their previous coordinates, but I am detecting them at new positions throughout our formation." The Admiral looked at his screens and felt his heart skip several beats. The human ships had not been destroyed. Instead, they had moved through space faster than his sensors could track. Now they were scattered among his fleet like wolves among sheep. Colonel Ryan Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Retribution, watching the alien fleet with calm, professional interest. He was a tall man with short black hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. Around him, his crew worked with the quiet efficiency that came from endless training. "All units, begin pattern Delta," he said into his communications device. "Show them what human engineering can do when we put our minds to it." The response was immediate and devastating. The human ships moved like dancers in space, their hulls seeming to bend and twist reality around them. They were not just fast. They were doing things that should have been impossible according to the laws of physics that the galaxy understood. The EDF vessel Thunder, commanded by Captain Pete Anderson, fired the first human weapon of the war. It looked like a simple beam of light, but when it hit the alien cruiser's sharp blade, something extraordinary happened. The beam passed right through the ship's shields as if they were not there, and tore the massive vessel in half from the inside out. "Impossible," Corax 9's tactical officer screamed. "Their weapon penetrated our molecular shields. How is that possible?" But there was no time to find answers. More human ships were firing now, and each shot brought destruction that defied explanation. Captain Sarah Miller's ship, the Vengeance, launched missiles that seemed to exist in several places at once. When they hit their targets, the explosions happened both on the outside and inside of the alien ships simultaneously. The human vessel Storm, under Captain Ben Rogers, demonstrated something even more frightening. It fired a weapon that looked like a twisted beam of darkness. When it struck the alien destroyer Night Hunter, the enemy ship simply began to age rapidly. In seconds, metal that had been forged in advanced factories began to rust and crumble as if centuries had passed. Admiral Corax 9 watched his perfect fleet fall apart in minutes. Ships that had conquered 17 worlds were being destroyed by technology that made no sense. His weapons officers were screaming reports of impossible energy readings. His pilots were trying to escape human vessels that could apparently be in multiple locations at the same time. "Communications," he shouted over the noise of alarms and explosions. "Get me the Galactic Council. Emergency priority transmission." On the council station, thousands of light years away, the emergency session was in complete chaos. The holographic displays showed the battle raging around Earth, with human forces systematically destroying one of the galaxy's most powerful fleets. Ambassador Zeth Kolar stood in the center of the chamber, his green skin now pale with shock. Around him, other aliens were making sounds of disbelief and fear. The confident invasion he had planned was turning into a massacre. "This cannot be happening," he kept repeating. "Our intelligence was perfect. They were primitives. They were using chemical rockets and metal bullets." Counselor Vex Prime's crystalline form was flashing rapid calculations as she tried to understand what they were seeing. "Ambassador, your intelligence reports. When exactly were they last updated?" 50 standard years ago, Zeth Kolar replied automatically. "But that is nothing in galactic terms. 50 years is barely enough time for a species to improve their agriculture, let alone develop impossible technology." From the observation deck, Captain Jake Morrison stood and walked down to the main floor. His simple human uniform looked plain, compared to the elaborate clothing of the alien diplomats, but every eye in the chamber turned to watch him. 50 years, Morrison said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast room. In 50 of your years, my species went from flying in machines with propellers to walking on our moon. We went from doing mathematics with pencils and paper to computers that could fit in our pockets. He gestured toward the displays showing the battle. But more than that, we learned something that you clearly never understood. We learned that survival is not about having the biggest weapons or the most ships. Survival is about being smarter, faster, and more determined than whoever is trying to kill you. Back in Earth space, the battle was reaching its terrible conclusion. Captain Lisa Parker's ship, the Defiance, pursued the fleeing alien vessels with relentless efficiency. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Tom Wilson, reported that the remaining alien ships were trying to escape the solar system. Let them run, Parker ordered. But make sure they understand the message we are sending. The human ships formed a perfect formation around the retreating aliens, herding them like sheepdogs controlling a flock. Every few minutes, another alien vessel would try to break away from the group, only to be gently but firmly pushed back into line by human ships that could move faster than thought. Admiral Corax 9 sat in his command chair, surrounded by the wreckage of his pride and the bodies of his crew. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by weapons that his science could not explain. The other half was limping away from Earth under the watchful eyes of human ships that could have destroyed them, all but chose to let them live. Communications, he said quietly. Send a message to all remaining ships, full retreat. Do not engage the human vessels under any circumstances. His tactical officer looked up from his damaged console. Sir, what do we tell the council about? What happened here? Corax 9 stared at the blue planet that had just humiliated the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Somewhere down on that world, humans were probably watching the battle and learning from it. They would be studying his ships, analyzing his weapons, and preparing for the next time someone was foolish enough to threaten their home. We tell them the truth, he said finally. We tell them that the galaxy has a new power, and that power does not welcome uninvited guests. As the surviving alien ships limped away from Earth, the human fleet maintained their formations, watching and waiting. They had won the first battle, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy now knew that Earth could defend itself, but they did not yet understand what that really meant. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council was still trying to understand what had happened. The great meeting hall buzzed with nervous conversations as delegates from across the galaxy watched the recordings over and over again. Each viewing made the impossible seem more real and more terrifying. Fleet Admiral Corax 9's battered flagship had finally reached the council station. The once proud vessel was scarred and broken, with entire sections missing from its hull. When the Admiral himself appeared on the main screen, even his enemies felt sorry for him. His purple skin had turned gray with shock, and his 4 eyes seemed to see things that were not there. The human ships, he said in a voice barely above, a whisper. They moved through space like it was water. Our best weapons passed right through them as if they were ghosts, and their weapons did things that should not be possible. Counselor Vex Prime's crystalline body flickered with rapid calculations. Admiral, please describe exactly what you observed. Our scientists need to understand what we are dealing with. Corax 9 laughed, but it was not a sound of humor. It was the laugh of someone whose mind had been broken by seeing too much. Understand? You want to understand? One of their ships fired a beam that made our cruiser age 1,000 years in 10 seconds. Another launched missiles that exploded in the past, destroying our ships before we even knew we were under attack. He paused, staring at something only he could see. And the worst part was not their weapons. The worst part was how calm they were. Like they had done this 100 times before. Like destroying the most powerful fleet in the galaxy was just another day at work for them. Ambassador Zeth Kohler had not spoken since the reports began coming in. He sat in his chair like a statue, his scales having turned the dull brown color that his species showed when in complete shock. Finally, he found his voice. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "I convinced you all that the humans were primitive. I promised you an easy victory, I was wrong about everything. Captain Jake Morrison stood up from the observation deck and walked down to the main floor. The entire chamber fell silent as the human diplomat approached the center stage. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who knew that the balance of power had completely changed. With respect to the Council, Morrison said, Admiral Corax-9 is wrong about one thing. We have not done this 100 times before. This was actually our first real space battle. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and alarmed sounds from dozens of different species. If this had been humanity's first battle, what would they be capable of after more practice? Morrison continued speaking as if he had not just terrified every alien in the room. But the Admiral was right about one thing. We were calm because we had prepared for this day since we first detected your observation ships watching our world. He gestured to the displays that still showed the wreckage of the alien fleet floating in Earth's orbit. Every human child learns about the day aliens came to evaluate us. Every school teaches classes about what we would do if someone decided our world looked like easy pickings. We have spent 50 years preparing for exactly what happened 3 days ago. Counselor Vex Prime's lights flashed in patterns that indicated deep thought. The technology your species demonstrated, it violates the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. How is such advancement possible in so short a time? Morrison smiled, and there was something in that expression that made every alien in the room feel uncomfortable. That is your problem right there, Counselor. You understand physics as a set of rules that cannot be broken. We see physics as a puzzle that needs to be solved. He walked closer to the central display where images of human ships still moved through recordings of the battle. When human scientists discover that something is supposed to be impossible, they do not accept that limitation. They ask, why is it impossible? And what would we need to do to make it possible anyway? The room was completely silent now. Every delegate was listening to the human explain how his species had managed to develop technology that defied everything they thought they knew about the universe. For example, Morrison continued, your scientists probably told you that faster-than-light travel requires more energy than exists in the universe. Our scientists said, what if we do not move the ship, but move the space around the ship instead? Your weapons experts probably said that matter cannot be in two places at once. Our weapons experts said, what if we convince the universe that it can be? Ambassador Threx of the Centauri Alliance found his voice. You are saying that humans simply ignore the laws of physics? No, Morrison replied. We argue with them. We negotiate with them. We find loopholes and exploit them. When the universe says something cannot be done, we find a way to do it anyway. He turned to face the entire assembly. That is what makes humans different from every other species in this galaxy. You all accepted limitations. We refuse to accept them. The silence stretched for long minutes before Fleet Admiral Corax-9 spoke again. Captain Morrison, what does your species want from us? Revenge? Conquest? An apology? Morrison looked at the broken Admiral with something that might have been sympathy. Admiral, we want what we have always wanted. We want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But we have learned that the galaxy does not always allow that. He gestured around the chamber at all the different species represented there. For centuries, you have all played a game where the strong take from the weak, where advanced civilizations consume primitive ones for their resources, where entire species disappear because someone else decided they did not deserve to exist. The human diplomat's voice grew harder. That game is over now. Earth is not available for conquest. Human colonies are not available for harvest. Human ships are not targets for your pirates and raiders. Counselor Vex Prime flashed patterns of concern. What are you proposing, Captain Morrison? I am not proposing anything, Morrison replied. I am telling you how things are going to be from now on. Any species that threatens human interest will discover why attacking Earth was the biggest mistake they could make. New holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing star maps that made every alien delegate gasp in shock. Human colonies were marked on dozens of worlds that the Council had thought were empty. Mining operations were shown in systems they had never explored. Research stations were indicated around phenomena they had not even detected. While you were debating whether to invade our world, Morrison continued, we were already living among you. We have been studying your technologies, your cultures, your strengths and weaknesses. We know more about each of your species than you know about us. Ambassador Zeth Kohler finally found his voice again. How long have you been watching us? Since the day your first scout ship entered our solar system, Morrison answered. We have been preparing for this moment for 50 years. We knew someone would eventually decide that Earth looked like an easy target. We wanted to make sure that whoever made that mistake would never forget the lesson they learned. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. The humans had not just defended themselves against an invasion. They had been planning for it, preparing for it, and waiting for it. The battle had not been a desperate fight for survival. It had been a carefully orchestrated demonstration of power. Captain Morrison looked around at the shocked faces of the galactic community and nodded with satisfaction. The age of easy conquest is over, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the human era. As he walked back to the observation deck, every alien in the chamber understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The small blue planet that had seemed like such an easy target had just become the most dangerous world in known space. 1 week later, the Galactic Council gathered for what everyone knew would be the most important meeting in their history. The Great Chamber looked the same as always, but everything had changed. The aliens who had once sat proudly in their floating chairs now whispered nervously among themselves, casting worried glances at the small human section. The human delegation had grown since the battle. Captain Jake Morrison now sat beside Secretary of Defense Karen Mitchell, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. Next to her was Admiral Tony Clark, the commander of Earth's deep space operations. His uniform was covered with medals that no alien recognized, but everyone could sense the authority they represented. Ambassador Zeth Kohler stood slowly in the center of the chamber. His once bright scales had remained dull brown since the battle, and his voice shook as he spoke. True, Vidian Empire formally withdraws all claims to the Terra system, he announced. We also request negotiations for a non-aggression treaty with the human species. The chamber waited for the human response. This was the moment when most species would accept the surrender and begin discussions about peace terms. But Admiral Clark's answer shocked everyone. Denied, he said simply. The word fell into the chamber like a stone into still water, sending ripples of shock through every delegation. Counselor Vex Prime's crystalline form flashed rapid patterns of confusion. Admiral Clark, she said carefully, surely you do not wish to continue hostilities with the Vidian Empire. Secretary Mitchell stood up, her voice carrying clearly through the vast room. The human species has been observing this council for many years. We have watched you divide up star systems like pieces of fruit. We have seen you treat entire civilizations as sources of raw materials. We have witnessed the systematic destruction of dozens of species who could not defend themselves. She gestured around the chamber at the assembled aliens. All of that ends now. Ambassador Threx of the Centauri Alliance leaned forward in his chair. Secretary Mitchell, what exactly are you demanding? We are not demanding anything, Admiral, Clark replied, standing beside his colleague. We are informing you of the new reality. The age of strong species conquering weak ones is over. Any civilization that attempts to destroy another for resources will face the full response of the Earth Defense Force. New holographic displays filled the chamber, showing star maps that revealed the true scope of human expansion. The aliens saw colonies on worlds they had never heard of, mining operations in systems they thought were empty, and research stations studying phenomena they could not even detect. While you were all playing your political games, Morrison added, humanity was spreading across the galaxy. We have been quietly establishing ourselves in hundreds of systems, learning about your technologies and preparing for the day when someone would threaten our existence. Counselor Vex Prime's lights flickered with rapid calculations. You are proposing to become the galaxy's police force? We are not proposing anything, Secretary Mitchell replied firmly. We are telling you how things are going to be. The galaxy now has protectors whether it wants them or not. Ambassador Zeth Kohler found his voice again. though it was barely above a whisper. What gives humans the right to make such decisions for the entire galaxy? Admiral Clark turned to look directly at the Vidian ambassador. The same right that gave you the authority to decide that Earth should be harvested for resources. The same right that allowed the Council to vote on destroying an entire species without even asking their permission. The right of superior force. He gestured to the recordings of the battle that still played on screens around the chamber. The difference is that we plan to use that force to protect the weak instead of destroying them. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. Captain Lisa Parker, the commander who had led the defense of Earth, walked down to join the human delegation. Her presence seemed to fill the room with quiet menace. "Let me make this very simple for everyone," she said. "The next time any species in this galaxy attempts to conquer another, they will find human ships waiting for them. The next time raiders attack defenseless colonies, they will discover that Earth's fleet has very long reach. The next time anyone decides that genocide is an acceptable solution to their problems, they will learn why attacking humans was their last mistake." The chamber was completely silent. Every alien delegate understood that they were witnessing the birth of a new galactic order. The humans were not asking for permission or seeking approval. They were simply stating facts about how the universe was going to work from now on. Counselor Vex Prime finally spoke, her voice carrying a new tone of respect and fear. "What role would humanity play in this new order? Would you seek to join the Galactic Council?" Morrison laughed, and the sound was not entirely pleasant. "Join the Council? The organization that voted unanimously to destroy our species? The group that spends years debating while entire civilizations are wiped out?" He shook his head. "Humanity has no interest in joining your council. We have no desire to sit in committees while people die. We prefer direct action." Secretary Mitchell stepped forward. "The Galactic Council can continue to exist and govern as you always have. But understand that there are now limits to what you can do. Any decision that involves the destruction or conquest of another species will be reviewed by human authorities." "And if we disagree with your review?" Ambassador Threx asked quietly. Admiral Clark's smile was cold as winter space. "Then you will discover why every species in the galaxy now tells their children stories about the day someone was foolish enough to attack Earth." Captain Parker activated a new display that showed the current positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. There were thousands of them, scattered across hundreds of systems, all watching and waiting. "We are already among you," she said simply. "We have been for years. Every major shipping route, every important system, every center of galactic civilization now has human ships within striking distance. You just never knew we were there." The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. The humans had not just defended themselves against one invasion. They had quietly positioned themselves to intervene anywhere in the galaxy at a moment's notice. "This is our promise to every species in this chamber," Morrison concluded. "Live in peace, trade fairly, and resolve your conflicts through diplomacy, and you will never see a human warship. But choose conquest over cooperation, choose destruction over negotiation, and you will discover why attacking Earth was the biggest mistake in galactic history." As the human delegation prepared to leave, Admiral Clark turned back to address the chamber one final time. "The age of easy conquest is over. The age of human protection has begun. We suggest you all learn to adapt quickly." The chamber remained silent long after the humans had gone. Outside the station's windows, alien delegates could see human ships, maintaining their positions in the surrounding space. They were not threatening, but their presence was unmistakable. The galaxy's new guardians were watching, and they would be there whenever someone needed protection from those who would do them harm. The Galactic Council would continue to meet and debate and make their decisions, but now they would do so knowing that somewhere in the darkness between stars, human ships were watching and waiting, ready to ensure that the strong could no longer prey upon the weak with impunity. The galaxy had learned a new truth that day. Earth was not just another world to be conquered. Humanity was not just another species to be harvested. They were the guardians now, and the universe would never be the same.